Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the nerd on the street, and today we're taking a look at Owncast. Alright everyone, in the past I've done videos about how to live stream to your website without going through any of the major live streaming platforms like Twitch or YouTube or I guess Kick these days. I made a video about setting up an HLS streaming server with Nginx, and that's still the system that I use at nerdonthestreet.com when I live stream. In the past I've also had experience setting up live stream chat rooms from scratch. I've done that with IRC, and I never did a complete start to finish video about that one, but I did talk about it in some of the other tech videos I've made in the past as well. So it's definitely possible to stream to your own website, but it's not super easy to set up using the technology that I've shown before. Nginx isn't that bad to set up, but especially on the chat side of things, IRC servers are not super simple to set up, especially if you want to have moderation capabilities. And then you have to deal with finding a web client to embed into your website, and it's just a very large project if you actually want to build your own streaming website from scratch, from the bottom up. Owncast is a dedicated application that you can host on your server that's basically going to give you a turnkey solution for live streaming to your own website through your own server. So it's got basically all the advantages of the stuff I've shown in the past, the HLS setup, the self-hosted chat. You're on your own platform, but it takes care of a lot of the software setup and configuration to actually get that running. And the best part is it's still free and open source software too. Now, the Owncast developers actually reached out to me a couple of years ago. It was really bad timing. They reached out to me in early 2022. I think it was April 2022, and it was right before I decided to take my 6-month sabbatical that year to finish my master's degree. And then after that sabbatical, I never really returned my content to the same schedule so far as what I used to make. So it kind of slipped into the wayside, even though back then I thought it was a cool project when I saw it. Fast forward to now, I wanted to get a tech video out this weekend, but I don't have a ton of time. I pulled up my list of possible tech videos and I saw it in there, and I was like, oh yeah, wasn't that supposed to make live streaming setup a whole lot faster? That'll probably be a pretty quick video to make. And I ran through the setup and it is indeed pretty quick. So if you're wanting to stream to your own website, feel free to follow along. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video with all the commands that I'm running so you can copy and paste them straight from there. And you'll also want to check out the official documentation for customization and more in-depth coverage of all the features that this software has. But for now, we're going to set it up. So let's go ahead and cut to the desktop. All right, and here we are on the desktop. So like I said, this is the web page that's going to have all the commands I'm about to run. I'll put the link to that in the description. Also, if you need any additional documentation, you can go to owncast.online. That is Owncast's official website. Now, the first place I'm going to go here is DigitalOcean, and I'm going to spin up a server for us to do this on. You obviously just want your server to have good network connectivity for something like streaming. I'm going to use a Debian server. I'm going to use Debian 12. That's the latest version, and this really doesn't have to be super powerful. I'm just going to go with their $6 a month plan. That's going to give us 1 GB of RAM, 25 gigs of disk space, and only a single CPU core. We're not going to do anything too crazy in terms of transcoding here. I'm just showing you the basic setup. You may want a more powerful server if you're going to be doing things like offering multiple resolutions when you get into actually configuring Owncast. I'll select my SSH key there. If you don't have one, you can just use a password. And for the host name here, I'm going to make this owncast-server. And we'll just create that. If you don't have your own server, you can go to digitalocean.knots.co or linode.knots.co, get a few bucks off of one for a couple months. And as soon as we have an IP address here, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to head over to my DNS configuration panel. Now, technically, Owncast does not need a domain name to run. If you want to run it on HTTP with just an IP address, you can do that. However, if you want to use SSL TLS with Let's Encrypt, like I'm going to show you here, you will need a domain name for that. So I'm just going to create a new subdomain. We're going to use example.nerdonthestreet.com. I'll paste my IP address in there, and I'll save that. We'll go ahead and connect to the server with the IP address, but that way the DNS record will be propagated later when we need it. So now I'm going to bring a terminal up here, and I'm going to SSH into our new server, root at that IP address. All right, and the first thing I'm going to do is just a quick apt update. I'm going to do an apt full upgrade. I like to make sure my servers are fully up to date before I even start. As you can see, there's 60 packages upgradable here, and we don't want to be trying to do this tutorial on an outdated server where we might have bugs or security issues. So we'll just go ahead and install all of those. I'll just hit enter here on this prompt. All right, and once that's done running, you could see we had a kernel update. We also had a dbus update here, so we are going to want to just reboot the server with a systemctl reboot. By the way, I am logged into the server as root. Obviously, if you're doing this on a different user, you'll just want to put in sudo for the majority of these commands, since we are installing packages, editing system-wide configuration files, and that kind of stuff. All right, so I've given it a few moments. I'll go ahead and SSH back in here. There we go. And now we can actually start the setup for Owncast itself. This is where you'll be jumping off from if you actually had a fully up-to-date server before beginning. So I am going to apt install a few new packages, and this is everything you need on a Debian 12 installation that's not installed by default to get this running, at least from the DigitalOcean image. We're going to install unzip. We're going to use that to unzip Owncast when we download it here. We're going to install ffmpeg, and that is a requirement for Owncast to do its video processing stuff. We'll install Apache 2. That's going to be used not as the primary web server for this because Owncast actually serves itself, but this will be used as a proxy server. We're going to use certbot that we use to get TLS for the website. And then since we're using Apache, I'll also put in Python 3 certbot Apache to make that a little bit easier. Since we're just using Apache as a reverse proxy, you can absolutely do this with Nginx if you want to. If you're choosing to use that instead of Apache, I assume you know how to set up a reverse proxy with it. But if you don't know anything, if you need it from scratch, just use Apache like I'm doing right here. All right, and that's complete. So like I mentioned, Owncast is not a normal web application that we're going to serve using Apache. A lot of the tutorials I do on this channel, we put things in the Apache directories under var www.html, but that is not what we're going to do for Owncast because Owncast actually includes its own web server, and that's what it's going to use to actually serve the files and the web pages as well as the video that you're streaming. So Owncast is actually going to be a separate application from Apache that we're running on this system, and it is not in the Debian repositories. Even if it was, it would probably be a little bit out of date, but it's not in there at all, and there is no PPA or Debian repository that I'm aware of for this application. They actually do have operating system packages for Arch Linux, FreeBSD, and NixOS, but not for any Debian or Red Hat based distros out there. So we are going to download the application onto the server kind of manually. First, we need to make a directory where we're going to keep it. I'm going to make that in opt, and I'm going to call it Owncast. The /opt directory is a default directory on a lot of Linux distributions. Now, opt is not technically part of the Linux file system hierarchy standard, even though it is in a lot of distros. It's in there mainly for historical reasons. As you can see, if I do an ls-alh on /opt, there's not really anything else in there other than DigitalOcean is using it looks like, to keep some of their cloud hosting tools on here. This is basically a directory that's not going to be managed by apt. It's not managed by the package manager, and for that reason, I like to put extra applications that I'm installing out of tree here in opt, just to keep them organized and out of the way of the rest of the system. If you have another directory you want to do this in, you can absolutely put this wherever you want. It really doesn't matter. But I'm going to cd into opt Owncast that I just created. That's where we're going to install it here. Next, we're going to download Owncast. So I'm going to do that with wget, which should be installed by default. If you get a command not found for wget, you can just apt install wget. And we need to grab the link for the latest Owncast release. So you can find that by going to github.com/owncast/owncast/releases/latest. I'll have this linked in my guide. I'm going to hit enter here. That will redirect you to the latest release of Owncast on GitHub. If you want to find that without going through my guide on Owncast's official website, you can click Get Started. I want to manually install Owncast myself. I want to download a release of Owncast, and if you click on that, they'll send you over to their manual install page where they link you to the releases section of their GitHub, which is the exact same thing. The latest release will be there at the top. So once you're on this latest release page, you can just scroll down to the bottom there, and we're going to find the Linux-64-bit zip file. Right-click on that, click Copy Link Address, and then back here in our terminal, I'll just right-click and paste that in, and we'll hit enter and download that zip file. So if I do an ls-alh, you can see that's right there. Next, we need to unzip it. That is why we downloaded unzip earlier. I'll run unzip on Owncast. You can just type the first few letters and press tab to autocomplete it. As you can see, it only inflated one file. That is the executable application Owncast. So this is just a binary. Once again, this is an open source application. We downloaded it from GitHub, and if you go back up to the root repository here, the source code that you're running is absolutely open source. So you're not running blindly an executable that you don't know what it does. This is, a semi-trusted thing. So we've got that executable there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the Owncast zip file here just because we don't need it anymore. And in the future, whenever you want to update Owncast, all you're going to do is just come right in here and repeat that process, download the zip file, extract it. It should overwrite this Owncast file, and then you'll want to restart the service that we're about to set up. So at this point, we could actually run Owncast just by typing in /Owncast, and that would start Owncast here. Of course, it would be tied to our terminal, so once I X'd out of this terminal, it would stop running. That's not what we want. We want to run it as a background service on this system. We also want to do that so we can have it start up automatically when we boot. And we're going to do that with a systemd service. We're going to set it up by hand right now, and it's super easy. We're just going to type in nano etc systemd system, and we're going to name the file owncast.service. So you're going to have to type in this trailing slash and then type in owncast.service. It will not autocomplete because we're creating it from scratch. If you want to use a different text editor like V or something, you're welcome to. I'm going to use nano. And this systemd service file, I'm going to paste this in here. This is in my guide, but I based it off of the official Owncast documentation. They've got a couple different options for systemd service files you can use. We're just telling systemd here that this is a unit. The description is Owncast streaming server. You can type in whatever you want for the description. This is a service. The type is simple, which means it's just a plain old executable. We want systemd to start it and stop it for us when we tell it to. The working directory, we want to specify opt Owncast or wherever you just extracted the Owncast binary before. The exec start line, this is just the path right to that Owncast file. So opt Owncast for us. We want to restart this on failure so that if it crashes, systemd will restart it. We want to give it a 5-second delay just so it's not spamming the system trying to restart if there's actually something wrong. In the install section here, wanted by, we're going to put multi-user.target just to make sure that when we configure it to start up on boot, it's going to wait until all the prerequisite stuff like networking and everything else it might need is ready to go before it tries to run. So we're going to go ahead, I'll hit Control X, Y, and enter to save that. Now, after you create a new systemd unit or after you edit an existing unit, we need to tell systemd that we updated its configuration with systemctl daemon reload. So I'll run that. And now we should be able to run a systemctl enable --now Owncast. So this enable command is going to say start up Owncast, the service, whenever we start the system up. So that's going to start on boot. The --now is basically just going to also start it right now so I don't have to reboot the system. If you don't run --now, you could instead do systemctl start Owncast to do it in 2 commands instead of 1. But I'm going to run that. You can see it created this symlink. That's going to ensure that it is started on boot. And now if I run a systemctl status owncast.service, if I hit tab, it will autocomplete out there. You can see it is enabled. That means it'll start on boot, but it is also active and running since 12 seconds ago when I hit enter on that command. So we've got a couple of different log messages here, hitting the arrow key to the right to scroll over. And as you can see, this seems to be working. Owncast is logging and it says configure this server by visiting /admin. So this really wasn't too bad at all. If I go back to a web browser here, if I just type in the IP address of our server, well, that's going to be Apache on the default port 80. Now, if I type in :8080 at the end of that IP address, that's going to be Owncast. So Owncast by default, as you can see, it was in the log telling me right here, web server is listening on port 8080. Owncast is going to use a slightly different port than default web server ports just because it knows it's not a full-fledged web server and it doesn't want to conflict with Apache or Nginx or whatever you might be running already. But yeah, this is Owncast and it is already running. You could technically start using it right now, although it is not secure yet since we haven't set up TLS. Now, like that thing said, in the log, if we type in /admin at the end of that URL, we get this pop-up here. The default username for Owncast is admin. The default password is ABC123. So enter those in and you'll be here in the Owncast admin page. Now, there's a reason I went to this page. I wanted to show you, like I said, right now we're running on port 8080, and in a moment we're going to have Apache actually act as a reverse proxy so that people going to this server don't have to type in port 8080 when they go to it. However, you might be running Owncast on another server that's also hosting other applications. If you're doing that, one of the other apps might already be using port 8080. So I wanted to show you under configuration here, if you go to server setup, you can actually change the Owncast port to something else. I'm going to keep it at port 8080, but for those of you who have more advanced configurations, I wanted to show you that. This is where you would change that. Do not change the admin password yet. We obviously want to change that from the default, but we're going to set up TLS first so that you're not sending your new password unencrypted over the internet. The port's the only thing that you should really be changing right now. So once you've got that all set, like I said, I'm just going to keep it at port 8080. We're going to go back here to the terminal and we're going to set up that reverse proxy with Apache now. So to do that, I'm going to nano into Etsy, Apache 2, sites available, and I'm going to create a new virtual host configuration file called owncast.conf. I've done a whole video just about virtual host configuration in Apache before, so you can go and check that out if you want more information on what all of this configuration means. Once again, you can copy and paste this straight from my guide. Now this is the HTTP virtual host that I'm putting in here. I'm saying the server name, that needs to be whatever you want your domain name to be that you've got forwarded to this IP address. The server admin email address doesn't really do anything. And then this is the default error and access log for Apache. You'll notice I'm not putting in any sort of directory here because Apache is not going to serve any files itself. Once again, we are only using Apache to proxy traffic, but we're not going to configure that here. We're going to configure it after we set up TLS. So we're just going to save this super simple skeleton virtual host. The only thing that's in here really is the domain name. I'll hit enter, and that is saved. I'm going to A2 insight owncast to enable that, and then we'll do a systemctl reload Apache 2, and that's going to apply that configuration. Now we're going to run certbot -- Apache, and this is going to use Let's Encrypt to set up a free TLS certificate to secure this website. So we're going to put in your admin email address, and it will notify you when your certificate's about to expire, just in case there's any configuration error on your server in the future. We'll accept the terms of service. I'm not going to subscribe to the EFF's email list right now. And as you can see here, this is why we just set up that virtual host, because it picked that out of the configuration we just made. Example.nerdofthestreet.com is the domain name that I'm using. Now, if you already had Apache on this system, you probably already know how this goes, but you can just type in the number of the domain name. Since it's the only one here, I don't even need to type a number. I'm just going to hit enter, and it'll do all the domain names by default, which there's only that one there. As you can see, it's requesting a certificate, and if the DNS is propagated, it should work. It looks like it did. All right, and certbot has been set up. So now, if I do an ls-alh on Etsy, Apache 2, sites enabled, you can see we not only have our owncast.conf that I created and enabled earlier, we also have the new owncast lessl.conf. And that is a symlink to this other file in sites available. So we're going to nano into that new file, Etsy Apache 2 sites available, owncast lessl.conf. Since it's a symlink, you could use enabled or available in your directory there. It'll get you the same file, and this is what this file looks like. I'm actually going to clean it up a little bit here. Just going to indent all of these lines by 4 just to make it look a little nicer. And in this file, this is where we're going to set up our proxy configuration. So the other file now, if I actually save this and go back to the regular one just to show you, it's going to rewrite any requests coming in and forward them on to HTTPS. So if somebody goes to your website on HTTP that's insecure, it's going to forward it on to the secure one. And then once they're connected securely, that's when we're going to proxy the actual traffic here. Once again, I'm going to copy and paste all of this because it is quite a bit. And I'm just going to go through here real quick and clean it up. I'll try to get these spaces into the guide so it's there when you copy and paste it. When I was preparing my notes for the video, it just didn't have those leading spaces in there yet. Okay, and this stuff, all of this configuration, it also comes from the Owncast documentation, largely. It's basically only the stuff you need in addition to what Apache put there by default from the Owncast documentation. So we're telling Apache that we want to proxy all of the traffic from anywhere. We're going to proxy it forward, and we're going to proxy it reverse so that the traffic can get back out when the Owncast application responds. We're setting our protocols here, and down here we also want to forward WebSocket traffic. Owncast does not just use HTTP traffic, it also uses WebSockets for real-time communication, particularly for the chat, I think is the main usage of that. But just paste all of that in, and we'll go ahead and save that file. Now we need to enable a couple of modules for Apache before we restart Apache here. We're going to run A2 inmod proxy_HTTP, proxy_WS tunnel, that's the WebSockets, and then headers. Those are the 3 Apache modules that aren't already enabled by default on Debian 12. We need to enable them. All right, and it's telling us to activate the new configuration. Now, since we actually enabled modules, we can't just reload Apache. We actually need to do a full restart of Apache 2. Now, if you're using a different distro, you may get another error here, and it might be Apache telling you that you need to enable another module. So if that's the case, just run A2 inmod again. Once again, these are the ones for Debian 12. All right, and that's actually everything we need to do for the TLS setup. So now I can come over here, and once again, before I had to type in :8080 at the end of that IP address. Now I'm just going to go to example.nerdonthestreet.com. Just going to leave everything else The default, as you can see, we were automatically redirected to HTTPS, so our TLS setup is working. And as you can see, the Apache reverse proxy is working because I got the Owncast server here, even though Apache's not hosting those files itself. So now I can go to /admin again, and I can type in admin and ABC123. I am just going to go here to configuration and server setup. If you don't do anything else in your server setup, you probably want to change the admin password. So I'm just going to type in a new admin password there. I'll click update. And as you can see, changing your password will log you out of the admin. You may want to refresh the page to force yourself to log back in if not prompted. So when we hit update, it disconnected us. Just hit refresh, log in one more time. And the new password worked. So I know that the password change has succeeded there. And that's everything. That's everything you need to do. And we can actually start streaming now. So streaming, if I go to home here, it's got our streaming URL. And I can open up an application such as OBS. I'm going to do that right now. All right, so here we have OBS Studio. I'm just going to resize this a little bit here. As you can see, it's doing a desktop capture and it's got Audacity getting my audio here. That's fine. So in your OBS settings, we're going to come in here to our stream. And this is where you're going to put in the server URL. You can see it's already in there from when I was testing before, but you can get your server URL right here. It's going to build it by default based on what you're connected on. That URL is not part of Owncast configuration yet, but it'll pick that out of how you're connected, and it'll say rtmp:// your domain name, the default RTMP port is 1935/live is the default ingest point here. So you can just paste that into your server area there. And then Owncast actually works with stream keys. Now my Nginx HLS setup I did a while ago, it didn't use stream keys, it used the ingest point as the authentication. Nginx actually used the stream key to determine what to call the M3U8 file. Owncast is a little bit more intuitive here. It's using the stream key as a stream key. Here you can see on the home page of your admin, we've got our streaming keys. If you click view there, it'll send you over to your server setup where we were before, and you can just click on the stream keys tab. Now you can click the eyeball there to see the default key. As you can see, it's ABC123. We don't want to use that. That's insecure. We can't remove this until we add a second one, but we'll go ahead and add a second one. It's going to generate a random key. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to click add, and then we'll delete the default one so that now all we have left is this more secure one. I'm going to click copy there, and that'll copy it to my clipboard. Just paste it in here. Just make sure that's correct. There we go. I'll hit apply, OK, in OBS. And now I'm going to go back to the home page of the Owncast server here. As you can see, it says the stream is offline. Be notified the next time the server goes live. Here in OBS, I'm going to click start streaming. I want to do this side by side here. Let me make this a little bit smaller, get our terminal out of the way, and we'll disable studio mode in OBS here. So when I click start streaming here, going to get rid of that extra text there that I still had in OBS from a previous stream. But as you can see, it did connect. It is dropping some frames because the internet that I've got right now isn't great. It's actually dropping quite a lot of frames. So I'm going to go ahead, once again, how much you can or can't stream, what quality you can stream, and it is going to depend on the bandwidth of your server and the bandwidth of your own network. Looks like I've got this set to 2.5 megabits per second right now. All right, I'm just going to drop that down to 2 megabits per second, 2000 kilobits per second, and let me try that again. So I'll hit start streaming, and this time maybe our drop frames won't be quite so abysmal. Yeah, our drop frames not dropping any frames now. So I was just streaming more than my internet connection could handle. Once again, that's the same as streaming to Twitch or YouTube or anything. You're going to be limited by your own internet connection from where you're streaming from. But here on the server, you can see this popped up. I can click play, and this is actually a real live stream. If somebody went to example.nerdofthestreet.com while I was recording this at 2:15 a.m. on a Monday, then they would see the stream. The audio should be working. We're going to, let's see, going to go ahead and set my microphone up here. Okay, so I've got my audio going into OBS now, and after a few seconds, that should come over to our Owncast stream. Microphone up here. Okay, so I've got my audio going into OBS now. Yeah, so I'm talking over it. I'm going to go ahead and mute that because that's going to be annoying for you guys to listen to. But as you could hear there, my voice was coming through the stream too. So that's everything you need to do to get a basic setup going. And there's also a chat room here. So I can type in, this is my chat. Yeah, now just to show you a little bit, I'm not going to get way too into the weeds here in terms of how to actually use Owncast, because you guys can go through the Owncast configuration. Once you've got this set up, you know, the configuration is pretty well laid out where it's not that hard to figure out what things do. And you can also read Owncast's official documentation. As you can see on the admin page here, the default admin page, it is going to give us some info about our stream. It's a healthy stream right now since my bitrate and everything is good to go. It's telling us the inbound video stream, as you can see here, it's 2,000 kilobits per second. The outbound video stream, it's actually transcoding it down to 1,200 kilobits per second. It's taking it down to 24 FPS to also lower the amount of bandwidth your viewers will need to have. So that's interesting. Now, if we go over here to chat and users, if you click on messages, you can see past messages that have been sent. By default, everybody's just going to be given random usernames. People can come in here when they're watching your stream. They can click the drop down in the top right, and they can click change name, and I can type in my username, JacobGKAU, for instance, and it will change my name right there. It looks like somebody else may have joined the chat just now, so that's interesting. It might have been one of the other tabs I still had open from last time I was testing this that just reconnected, because nobody should know that the server is running right now. But as you can see, when people send chat messages, they show up here. This is sort of your moderation panel, and it's very easy to ban people from your chat if somebody is sending spam or causing trouble. You can just check the message. You can hide or show multiple messages from the chat. If you click on users, it will show you the people who are connected. As you can see, I'm only listed as one person because it kept track of when I changed my name. Whoever that other person was has left the chat at this point. And you can ban people here. Now, the sign up and moderation flow is the one thing that I think Owncast isn't quite up to par with Twitch or something like that, because there are no accounts per se with Owncast. When somebody goes here, it's going to use their IP address and probably also a combination of that with cookies to try and match who they are. Now, if I click ban on JacobGKAU here, which is me, I'm going to click that. It's going to remove my chat messages. It actually hid chat for me. It says chat is offline because I just banned the user in this window. As you can see, I show up now under banned users and under IP bans. So by default, it's going to ban them cookie-wise, however they were being identified. It's also going to IP ban them because obviously it's super easy to just open an incognito window. If I open a private window here in Brave and go to that website, chat is still going to be, well, actually, it still let me connect there. No, it didn't. When I try to send a message, it says chat is offline. So that IP banning does work. Obviously, if I go ahead and unban my own IP address, which I'll probably want to censor from this video. After I do that, if I refresh the main page here, I'm still identified by probably a cookie that I'm the person who was chatting as JacobGKAU before, so I'm still not allowed to connect to chat. However, since I've removed the IP ban, now I can come in here in a new tab and I can actually send messages again in that new tab. So multiple different ways here that Owncast is keeping track of viewers. Just a quick anecdote. Personally, this seems really loose compared to actually having people have passwords and have to put in email addresses to authenticate themselves with. However, like I said, I have actually set up completely from scratch live streaming chat systems with IRC before, and we never got around to setting up a real authentication system with that. We also had a system extremely similar to this where people just showed up every week and they entered their own name before they connected. This is actually better than what we had because they don't have to type their name in again every time they go here. It saves it in a cookie. But if you're a small streamer and you've got a tight-knit community, what we found in the community that I set up that IRC server for was that the community, we built the system for them. They understood we did it so that they could chat without having to go through Twitch or Mixer at the time or any of the big tech players like that. And they did not abuse the system. They didn't impersonate each other. We didn't have any issues with that or really even spamming, because basically if people spammed too much in the stream chat, even though it is possible to get around bans, sort of, although it does require, changing your IP address, which is a little bit of a pain for people to have to do. That community also had a Discord server, for instance, and we had instances where the people on stream said, hey, if you don't stop spamming, we're going to remove you from the Discord server, then you can't hang out with us between streams, and so they stopped. Obviously, if somebody was actually trying to cause trouble, you'd just want to ban them, getting a new IP address isn't always trivial, depending on your ISP. The user might have to spoof a different MAC address or something to get their ISP to give them a new IP address on demand. So yeah, there is a system in here where you can actually set people up to be able to authenticate. If you go to the social section of your configuration, you can actually specify your server URL, and that will let people authenticate from your server. You don't necessarily want to do this, but they're kind of trying to integrate with the fediverse, which I am not full on in the fediverse yet, federated social networking and stuff. What they're basically trying to do is hook in with that so that people can come in here to your chat and they can authenticate Now, since I just set the server URL, I can type that in here, and then it's going to ask me, well, it's not since I've already authenticated. So that's using IndieAuth, and then fedauth. If you've got an account on Mastodon or something, for instance, if you've got an account on a Mastodon server, you may be able to put your account in here and then authenticate through that. If you do that, then Owncast will register that your username is only allowed to be used by people who are authenticated with that Fediverse account. So for example, I'm connected as JacobGKAU right now using IndieAuth, which was the server itself, which basically the server itself, you're only going to want to use that for the account of the person who owns the server because it requires the admin password. If I go to example.nerdonthestreet.com here, this is what it looks like. I'm going to try to change my name to the same thing, JacobGKAU, and it's going to tell me the name JacobGKAU has been already registered, which is incorrect grammar, but it says if this is your name, please authenticate. So I come up here, I click authenticate. I'm using IndieAuth with my Owncast server here, example.nerdonthestreet.com, but other people with their own Owncast servers could authenticate on your server this way. It's going to ask me to sign in with the admin account. Once I do that, then it lets me use the name, JacobGKAU. So it's not actually that complicated. Once again, if your viewers are on Mastodon and things, and if that integration actually works, then that's one way they can do this, or each of your viewers would have to set up an Owncast server. You probably don't want to have them all have to do that with IndieAuth, but fedauth or fedauth here with the social network thing, I understand what they're trying to do, and it's better than having absolutely no authentication, which once again is how I actually helped another production stream run for many months with no issues. But you can figure out, what level of tolerance you want in terms of moderation and all of that. Here under chat, I did just want to show you real quickly, you can turn chat on or off altogether. You can set forbidden usernames that nobody can use, and you can also, if you type in at least 10 different options here, it won't work if you just type in one default username, but you can specify default usernames here. By default, it's just going to make them with random words, but if you've got a themed stream and you want to create themed default usernames, you can do that. It seems a little cumbersome to have to type in a different default username for every single possible option. The system that we had in IRC, we were able to have username dash and then a couple number signs, and then it just added a random number to the end. I actually opened up an issue on Owncast's GitHub page about that, feeling out if they'd be interested in having that feature. It sounds like they would be open to somebody contributing it, but they don't think that it's super useful and they're not going to code it themselves. So if you want to have default usernames that are custom, you're going to have to type in every single one individually here for now. But yeah, I wanted to show you can do that. I'm not going to click through every single settings page here because you can go and do that. The one other thing I wanted to show you here is how to embed these things into other websites. You can go here and you can customize what all of this says. This welcome to Owncast, this about section. That's going to be here under general, down at the bottom here. This is your custom page content. If I save that, then I can go back here and refresh, and it's going to show up right there. And according to the Owncast documentation, you can actually go into your Owncast directory on your server, and inside of the data directory, you can create a directory called public. Make dir public, and then in there you can put any images or anything else that you might want to embed in the HTML in your about section here or anywhere else on this Owncast site. But what if you already have another website, you've done all of the hard work, creating an HTML page or, your PHP website or whatever you've got, and you want to embed this video in this chat, you want to use it for your streaming setup, but you don't want to use the Owncast interface. Just to tie this together closer with those previous videos I did, I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. There's also a page on the Owncast documentation about this. So just to demonstrate, I'm going to go back to Etsy Apache 2. Actually, here, I'm just going to log out of our Owncast server just to demonstrate. I'm going to SSH into the actual Nerd on the Street server right now. All right, so this is the actual nerdonthestreet.com server here, where nerdonthestreet.com is hosted. I'm going to create a new file here, test.htm, just for this video, and I'll remove it afterwards, so it's not going to be there if you go to it. But this is going to be our stream test page right there, and then in the body, all we have to do is embed an iframe in order to get our video in our chat in here. Now, this is the iframe I'm going to use for the video. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. As you can see, I'm using a style tag, and I'm setting this up so it's responsive is all that I'm doing. In the iframe itself that you're putting in here, you can specify a manual width and height if you don't want to do all the fancy responsive stuff with CSS. But the actual place that you're embedding, that's going to be https:// the address for your Owncast server /embed/video. That's what you're going to embed. If I save that and I go here to nerdonthestreet.com / what did I just call that? test.htm. As you can see, that has embedded Owncast in the web page here. Now, in order to get the chat in there, I'm going to come in to test.htm, and I'm just going to put in some basic CSS here so that we can get a side-by-side view going for our video and our chat. All right, and the iframe source for your chat room is going to be your Owncast URL /embed/chat/read-write if you want people to be able to actually send chats in here. You could change that to read only if you want people to only be able to read the chat on a different web page but not able to send it. But read-write is if you want people to be able to log in and send chat messages. All right, I'm just going to put that for now /iframe to close that out. And let's see if that looks okay or if I missed something in my styling. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and set a height that's bigger than that in the iframe. I'm gonna say height equals what? Let's do 800, should get us 800 pixels. Refresh here. All right, so now we've got a chat here embedded next to our video. Video is playing. It does look like my responsive CSS there is a little bit messed up with this extra bar at the bottom of my video player. But as you can see, I do have a chat room next to it, and I can send messages from here on my own web page. And then if I go back to the actual Owncast URL, they're gonna show up over there. And if I send them from the Owncast page, then they will show up over on my custom web page. So yeah, if I really wanted to get technical here, I could change my padding a bit to try and fix that display so that it's wasting a little bit less space. And I could go in and tweak the CSS for all the individual elements and stuff here. This is not a web development video. I'm just showing you how you can plug this into your own web page once again, and you should be able to take it from there. But yeah, that's all we need to do to set up Owncast on your own server. And now you have a streaming setup that you can use, and you're not going through any of the big tech companies like Twitch or YouTube or anyone else. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you do have any additional questions about the setup, feel free to go over to the Nerd on the Street forums and ask questions in here, or you can leave a comment on this video on YouTube, Dailymotion, or nerdonthestreet.com. But for now, that was our Owncast configuration. It was a little bit more off the beaten path of Linux application setup, but it was also a little bit more turnkey in terms of the web setup than the more manual methods I've shown in the past. So I will leave it off there. I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the Nerd on the Street, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.